Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Stitch Sessions. We are getting into the spring days. They're getting closer, and I always like to dive into some kind of spring cleaning, spring projects, and I always think of like bathrooms and kitchens and cleaning out cupboards and things like that. So for this week's tutorial, we are working on this really fun mini bathroom rug. And so I made this one so I can place it right in front of my sink. Now you can make yours as long as you like. Now mine measures 22 inches in length and 14 inches in width or depth. So I worked mine lengthwise. So we started basically with 4 rows of single crochets, and in this tutorial you're going to be introduced to a new stitch called the rug stitch, and it just creates this really sweet little texture, and it's very comparable to I would call it like a mini crunched little puff stitch. Now I will put a link in the description box down below of the channel where I found this stitch. Now she's called Natty Crochet, and she's actually not quite sure if that's the proper name for the stitch. I haven't been able to find it in any other place. So if you see this stitch and you know it as something else, please leave a comment in the comment box down below and let me know, okay? So I just thought it was appropriately named the rug stitch, and therefore I used it on a rug. It creates a nice little density and also lots of great texture. So I used 2 colors in this project just to give it a little bit of contrast. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it didn't take me very long at all. So if you're looking to spruce up your bathroom or any room in your house for that matter, this rug project is perfect for you. So let's get all of our materials together and let's get stitching up our bathroom rug. All right, so here are all the materials you're going to need for your bathroom rug. The yarn I'm using is 100% cotton, and I really strongly recommend 100% cotton. Sometimes people like to use a blend, a cotton blend that has, some people are happy if it's at least 85% cotton. I just like when you're dealing with anything to do with moisture or heat, like things that go in the kitchen. In this case, where I'm doing this for the bathroom, where there's a lot of moisture, I absolutely categorically believe in sticking to 100% cotton. It will withstand the moisture well, and it's a lot easier to just throw in the wash. So that's what I'm using for this project, and it is the Bernat Handicrafter cotton. And these come in generally 50-gram balls. So that one's 50 grams. Some of them come in 42.5 for some strange reason, like this one is 42.5. But I do believe that they have the same yardage, or maybe not. This one is 71 yards or 65 meters. And this one is 84 yards or 77 meters. So for some strange reason, some of these have slightly different amounts. Now, for my rug in total, for the size I'm making, which is 14 inches in depth and 22 inches in length, I am using approximately 250 grams worth of yarn. So that's what I'm going to do for my size. If you want to make yours slightly larger, then obviously you're going to need a bit more yarn. But that's what I've got going on here. Just in case you're wondering, my color choices are white, and this one here, which I love. They've got this scented line, and it just smells divine. This one is called Chamomile. Okay, so that's the yarn. I do have a measuring tape, so either a ruler or a measuring tape for the size of your rug that you would like to make. So if you're making yours a different dimension than mine, I recommend you using a measuring tape. So I always have that on the side there. Now the hook size, they generally recommend a 5mm crochet hook for this yarn. It is a medium size 4-weight yarn. I am going to be using A 5.5 millimeter hook, also known as an I or a size 9. And I always kind of like to play with my hook size. I don't always follow the rules of the recommended hook size, just because I find I like the way that the stitches sit just a little bit. They're still snug, but they're not super, super tight. And because of the stitch we're using, I find that slightly larger hook is where I want to go. So I'm using a 5.5. I always make sure I have a pair of scissors, and make sure you've got a trusty darning needle on hand to sew in all those ends. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin with the white yarn, and we're going to start by placing a slip knot on our hook. And we're going to start by creating a chain of 48 stitches. So you'll just yarn over and pull through and pull through. You're going to keep doing that until you have 48 stitches. And always remember that you don't want to do this initial chain too tight, because it will cause your work to bunch up on the end there. Okay, once you have your 48 stitches, you're going to have something that looks like this. Make sure it's not twisted, right? And that your stitches are sitting nice and even. Now, for me, like I said, I'm going to be working on a width of 14 inches. So for me, that was 48 stitches. If you are a tight crocheter, you will need more. If you are a really loose crocheter, you may need less, but 48 stitches is what I have. What we're going to do now is we're going to begin with the first row, and we are going to find the second chain from the hook. Remember, we don't count the loop that's on the hook. We count 1 and 2. We're going to single crochet into this stitch. However, to create a nice finished edge, instead of going in through the front of the stitch, which would be the back loop here, I'm going to turn my work over, and I'm going to work into the back bumps of my stitches. So let me just show you. So from the front, they all look like V's. And then when you turn over the back, you see these bumps here. That's what we're going to work into. So again, I'm going to find the second chain from the hook. So 1, 2, and then just in from behind, I'm going to insert my hook just in through that back bump and place a single crochet. Just like that. And that is what I'm going to do all the way to the end of this chain. So I'm going to go into the next one and just help it through. And this is why, again, you don't really want to stitch too tightly. Okay, and again, the next back bump, single crochet. Okay, so I've got 3 there. And as you can see now, it forms those nice V's along the bottom, which gives you a much more smoother finished edge. Okay, so go ahead and do that all the way to the end, and I'll meet you when you finished row 1. Okay, so I now have my first row completed, and now you should really be able to see that that beautiful finished edge is coming into play here, because we worked into the back bumps only. Okay, so you will now have 47 stitches. Remember, we began in the second chain from the hook. So that is row 1. Now what's going to happen for row 2, 3, and 4 is simply a repeat of row 1. It's going to be all single crochet stitches. So I'm just going to take you through how to start each row and then also how to end each row. So at the beginning of each row here, you will always chain 1, or at the end of each row, and turn your work. And immediately into that very first stitch there, you're going to place a single crochet. Okay, and now we have stitches we can actually work into as opposed to chains. So you're simply going to work 1 single crochet into each and every single stitch until you get to the end of your row. And each row now should always end with 47 stitches. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to meet you back up here at the end of row 2 just to kind of take you through making sure you don't miss that final stitch, because that's a common boo-boo that happens there. Okay, so 1 single crochet into each stitch, and I'll meet you back here when you've got 1 stitch left. Okay, so I actually have 2 stitches left at the end of my row here, so that one's pretty easy to see. So I'm going to single crochet. Now this one is quite obvious because we had that chain 1 and then we went into the second chain. But what will happen a lot of times, remember we chained 1 and went immediately into that very first stitch? Well, when you turn, that'll create a proper last stitch there. So you do not want to go into that chain 1, okay? So at the very end, you just find that last loop there, insert your hook, and single crochet. And you are finished. And it gives you a nice straight edge. Now, if you are uncertain, if it doesn't look right to you, always just start counting from your hook, not the one on the hook, but the stitch from the hook, and work your way backward to the beginning. So remember, we don't count that little chain 1, we just count the V. If you have 47 stitches, then you are A-okay. If you have 46, then you're 1 short. If you have 48, you have 1 extra, okay? So that's just a nice, easy way to make sure that you have the same number of stitches every single time. And every time you start a new row, you chain 1 and turn and immediately go back into that very first stitch. So technically that chain 1 doesn't really count. It's just there to give us a little bit of height. So the loop at the top, that's what counts, not the chain 1. Okay, then you continue on row 3, continue doing 1 single crochet into each stitch as usual. Okay, now you can really see it's really coming along. So you're going to continue on for row 3 and row 4, 1 single crochet into each stitch. So 4 rows of single crochets in the white are what are going to give us those beautiful white stripes. And then I'll meet you at the end of row 4 when we introduce our peachy color. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the end of my 4th row. And so I just have 1 more single crochet left to do. And I'm going to be introducing my peachy colored yarn next. So what I'm going to do is I will insert my hook and pull up a loop to begin the single crochet. But I'm not going to finish it with the white. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to bring in my peach colored yarn, and hopefully you can see the difference there on camera. And that is what I'm going to use to pull through and finish that single crochet. And I'll just pull that tight a little bit. Now, for those of you that are not comfortable carrying your yarn, in this project I'm going to be carrying my yarn, meaning I'm not going to snip off between color changes. I'm just going to keep carrying that other yarn up at the end of every row. So in this case, I've dropped my white yarn now. And if you want, you can actually tie a little knot here just to secure it, but I feel pretty confident in where it is. Or you can simply snip off your yarn when you're done every color and start again. Now, because I just don't want to deal with weaving in all these ends along the sides, I am not going to snip off my yarn, okay? So that is how you switch over. Before you resolve the final stitch, you want to pull through with the new color. And so now we're ready to begin row 5. Okay, so to begin row 5, you want to chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work. Okay, now this is where you want to be careful not to get your yarns tangled up. So I am going to completely drop my white yarn. I'm just going to leave it aside there for now. And I'm going to work over my peachy tail there. Now it's very subtle, so I think on camera it might be tricky to see the difference between the white and the peach. But I think once we start getting into the actual rug stitch, it'll come through a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do when I set aside my white yarn, because I want to nestle it in to this row, I'm just going to bring it over so that it gets nestled inside the next row. And that's what I'm going to do for each row until I'm ready to use my white yarn again. And I'll show you what I mean the next time we come up to that row again. So once you've chained one, you've turned your work, you're going to go right back into the very first stitch. I'm just going to move this tail out of the way there. So the very first stitch is right there. So you're going to insert your hook and you're going to pull up a loop. Okay, so we are beginning the rug stitch now. So you've got 2 loops on your hook, and now you're going to yarn over, but you're only going to pull through 1 loop. So it kind of creates a little bit of a chain there and the loop on your hook. Okay, so you've got 2 loops currently on your hook. So now you're going to go back into that same loop. You'll pull up a loop, so there's 3 loops on your hook. Now, with that same loop you just pulled up, that third one, you're going to continue to pull it through the other 2. And so what that does is you can see it scrunches it right down and creates a little bit of a little bobble effect on the other side. You can't really see it much just yet until you really get a few of them going. So let's do that again. You're going to insert your hook into the next stitch. Oops. Pull up a loop. Now you're going to yarn over, pull through the first loop only. Okay, so it looks like a little chain there. Now we're going to go back into that same stitch. You're going to pull up a loop, and then with that same loop, you'll pull through those first 2 loops, just like that. Okay, so it crunches everything really down tightly. And we'll go into the next stitch. So you'll insert your hook, whoops, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only. Then go back into that same stitch, pull up another loop, so you have 3 loops on your hook, but that last loop, you're going to keep pulling it through the other 2. Okay, so it's a very crunchy stitch, we'll call it, and it looks like it's pretty like packed in there. But that's it, very, very easy. That's what we're going to do all the way down to the end of our 5th row. So one more time, you'll insert, pull up, yarn over, pull through 1 loop only, insert, pull through everything. And that is the rug stitch. Okay, so finish doing that all the way to the end of your row 5, and I'll meet up with you when you're just about ready to go on to row 6. Okay, and I'm just going into my last stitch here, the last rug stitch. This has just worked same way to the very last stitch. Okay, so I think now you'll be able to see more prominently the peachy color against the white. Just love how that looks. And you can see it creates this little bit of a thicker texture, more like of a crunchier look. Just love that. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to do a total of 4 rows of this. So we did 4 rows of the white, and now we're going to do 4 rows of the peach color using the rug stitch. So at the end of every row, when you're working the rug stitch, you're going to chain 1 and turn, just like you would with a single crochet. And then now what you're going to notice is that it's created a bit of a thicker crunched look. So we have to know where to place our hook. So you see there, that's where everything got crunched down. So you just want to make sure you turn your work so you can see the very top of your stitch, and where you see those V's, that's the actual top of the stitch you created. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right away into the very first stitch. I'm just going to turn this way so you can see. So right away into that very first stitch, you will insert your hook through that stitch there. So we just ignore these little bumps that were created, and you'll just continue as before. You'll pull a loop through, yarn over, and pull through 1 loop only. Then you go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, and continue to pull through the other 2. So nothing has changed, and there's your first rug stitch. So once you see a few rows on top of each other, you'll really see how lovely this texture comes out. So again, into the very next stitch. So I really just want to make sure I can see the top of that stitch. Now I'll snuggle, insert my hook, and pull up a loop. Okay, and then back in and pull through all 3. So same thing you've been doing so far. So we're going to continue doing this for another 3 rows. But what I'm going to do is I am going to meet up with you at the end of your second row, because remember, this is where we've got our other yarn that we're going to carry over. So every second row, you're going to have to just continuously move your yarn up. If you have snipped your yarn, you don't have to worry about that. Just continue on. You'll come to the end, chain 1, turn, all the way back, chain 1, turn. So you want to have 4 rows of your peach color. Those of you that are carrying your yarn, I'll meet you back here shortly. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end of my second row of rug stitches, and now you can really see that the stitches are really starting to stand out. So we've got that band of the white in the single crochet, so we had 4 rows there, and now we finished 2 rows of that rug stitch, and now you can see the texture really popping out. It looks so lovely. Now I just want to show you how to carry your yarn, as always, for those of you that are going to do so. Okay, so I'm going to go into the very last stitch, and I'm going to start that rug stitch as usual. I'll chain. Okay, and now before I go in one more time, okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to pull this white over, but I'm going to insert my hook first, and whoops. What I want to do is I just want to keep this kind of loose so I can push it behind the hook. See the white there? I want to push it behind the hook so that way it'll get trapped in there when I pull up the peach. Just like that. See how the white is right there? It's trapped inside, which is perfect. Then I just finish my rug stitch as usual. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. Okay, so now you can see that the white has been brought up to the next row. So that way you don't have this kind of strand waiting there 4 rows later to be brought up. And so I just now push that to the back. And again, this is where you want to be careful not to get your yarn all tangled. And then I continue with my rug stitch as normal. So now I'm going to go into that very first stitch, but you see I keep pushing that white to the back there so it continues to get trapped in there and goes up along with each row. So then I insert my hook, and you can see the white strap there. Now I just drop it and I don't worry about it anymore. And then I continue on with my rug stitch. Okay. And now it's easy peasy. I just go on just like that. Oops, I guess that's the end of my tail. That's still peeking out there. Back in and pull all the way through. Okay, so that is basically the whole pattern for this project. And you can see the white is there. So it gets nestled in and it's not too prominent. And I don't plan on doing a border for this, so that's why I just want to make sure it gets hidden nice and neatly and goes up really smoothly. So what you're going to do now, this is the 3rd row, or row 6 in total of your project. You're going to finish row 6 with the rug stitch, chain 1 and turn. I'm sorry, this is row 7. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to finish row 7. This is row 7 of your total project, but it's the 3rd row of your rug stitch portion. So you're going to finish row 7 all the way to the end. You'll chain 1 and turn and finish row 8. That will complete the pattern repeat for this project. Okay, so you're going to do 4 rows of the pink, and then you're going to go back and do 4 rows of the white. So we're basically going to go 4 rows and 4 rows, 4 rows and 4 rows. Okay, so basically you're repeating 8 rows in total, 4 of the white, and then row 5, 6, 7, 8 of the pink, and that's it. So you're going to do it to your desired length. So like I said, my length is going to be 24 inches. Okay, so go ahead and finish row 7 and row 8, and I'll just meet up with you real quick just to kind of touch base and see how you're doing. Okay, so I'm just coming up to my very last stitch in my fourth and final round of my peach color. So this is where I'm going to be changing colors. So I'm going to begin my rug stitch as usual, insert and then chain. And now I'm going to insert again, but instead of picking up the peach color, I'm actually going to drop it and I'm going to pick up my white. And that is what I'm going to feed through. So what happens is the white is coming up and the coral gets to finish that stitch. So that way it's not too, the color change isn't too jagged, I call it. So it's nice and smooth. And now we're going back to our white. So we're going to now just do regular single crochets. So we're going to chain one and turn our work. So now the pattern is going to be repeated, okay? So we're going to go back to doing single crochets, and we're simply going to place one single crochet into each stitch, and I'm just pushing this peach one aside. So for my first stitch, when I come to this end, I just always want to bring it up and then push it aside. So remember, into the rug stitch, that's where you're going into, right? So there's my very first stitch. I'm going to single crochet, and now I've locked in that peach, and now I'm just going to drop it and continue working with my white color. Okay, so just placing a single crochet, one into each stitch, just like that. I really love how not only the contrast of color, but the contrast of texture. So it's not a dramatic contrast in color, but it's enough that it creates a really nice juxtaposition of colors and the texture. So you've got this beautiful rug stitch, and then you've got just a nice simple single crochet. I'm very happy with how that's coming out. So now this is all you're going to do. You're going to repeat rows 1 through 8 for as many times as you need for your length. And like I said, my length, I'm going to be working until I get to 22 inches. So for me, I know I'm going to repeat rows 1 through 8 a total of 12 times. So I'm going to have white, peach, white, peach, white, peach, white, peach, until I get the length I need. At the end, I will then add an additional 4 rows of the white. So what's going to happen is you're going to have the white peach, white peach, white peach, and then I'm going to do one more section of the white single crochets so that the white flanks the rug on each side. Okay, so other than that, I'm going to leave you there. I would press pause on this video, maybe put on your favorite Netflix show or watch a movie, and you are off to the races creating your rug. And voila, here is my mini bathroom rug. And I love how the contrast of the rug stitch and the single crochets just really stands out in this design. It's simple, but very poignant, I think. And so I finished off the last 4 rows with the single crochet row, and that's it. If you want, you can do a finishing border, but because of the nature of these stitches, and you can see create a little bit of a ripple effect because of the fact that these stitches bunched up a little bit more, I decided to leave it much more natural, and it has a natural wave to it, and I like it. So there you have it, your bathroom rug, and mine is exactly that 22 inches like I desired, and I finished off with the 4 rows of single crochets. And so yeah, I'm just keeping it nice and simple, and I just ended off with the 4 rows of single crochets, and I left it as is. And I've woven in all of my ends, and I'm very happy with it. So I hope you found this really interesting to work on. Simple design, but with a little bit of pop. And I just love how that texture came out. Now, if you have any other questions, as always, pop me a comment in the comment box down below, or You know you can always reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And you can also reach me on Instagram and Facebook at The Stitch Sessions. And remember, if you haven't pressed that subscribe button, make sure you do so. Come join me every Wednesday when I upload a new tutorial. So thanks so much for coming along. Hope you have an amazing day as always. Happy crocheting and take care. See you guys in the next session.